the online safety bill passed, and it might not be good for us. It might not do anything. It might be really bad. It might be completely neutral. Because if I'm completely honest about this, Peter, I've no idea how they're going to administer or regulate this whole thing. Because if it's going to be putting under social media companies, under these new remits, most of it is for things that they already are supposed to do if they even want to be able to be sold on the Apple and Android app stores in the first place. And everything else that they do is either completely impossible to administer for them, or will require very highly regulated AIs to be able to do it. And I know that they're starting to incorporate a lot of AI into regulation of content that you find online recently. So,
well, the police are just going to be turned into an online police force because they're already busy enough policing tweets. I know.
Yeah, that's what they already are, aren't they? Yeah, and I'll get into more of the details as we go along, but just to remind everybody that we've currently got a promo code going for 50% off of any membership on the website. So that's bronze, silver, and gold tier. That is Sargon, real photo, because Carl is gone. And while he's away, we've discounted the price for you. So we just want you to know the only thing keeping these prices up so high is Carl being an absolute stingy man. So while he's gone, we've decided, hey, let's cut all of the people who want to subscribe some slack. Now, to clear up some confusion that has been laid by Dan over the past few days, the promo code will not be active for the next 3 months. It'll be active for the next few weeks. I don't know if we've got a definitive end date for it yet. What will happen, though, is if you use this promo code, the price of your subscription will be half price for the next 3 months. So if you subscribe now, then this one will be half price, next month half price, month after half price, and then back to normal pricing. So if you get gold tier membership, be £15 now, £15 then, £15 again, and then £30 on the 4th month of your membership. So just want to be extra clear with that because, we're a slick operation that we run here. So
I'm just hoping that you can have one of those hats in your shop.
I wish. I wish. I was in Spain recently, and I should have come back with something like this. You know that in Spain they've got all of these bottles of whiskey and other forms of alcohol and rum that you can get that are in the shape of matadors and Spanish guitars, and each one of them has a tiny little matador hat on the bottle cap. I should have got one of those.
Yep.
I really should have got one of those. And also, one last thing is that, as always, we have lots and lots of exciting content on the website. That's videos and written articles and all sorts that we've got on there. Excuse me. Including this recent one from Rory, talking about the preeminent standard. Now, Rory is a gentle soul at heart. He may look like some kind of terrifying rugby beast, but deep down, he's a very romantic man. And this is him lamenting Swindon, and in particular, the Swindon Works, that being the old railway station, the old industrial centre of Swindon, which is now currently a designer outlet stall filled with fast food restaurants, and specifically talking about the area that was where they were manufacturing most of the railway carts, I think, and which is now host to a KFC. That's always a nice moment in modernity, isn't it? When you walk through, go, wow, this building's magnificent. Isn't it all wonderful? There's so much history there. I'll have a bargain bucket, please. No, there's a disconnect. There's a contradiction there that really affects romantic souls like Rory. And it's very, very worth reading because, I don't know, it's important to consider these things and consider our recent past and what it's been turned into. And Rory's always got an excellent analytic eye for such a thing. Anyway, so we've covered the online safety bill a lot over the past few years because it's been something that has been concerning us and lots of other people over the past few years, specifically regarding the ways that the government was going to use it and probably will use it, because there was one particular bit in the legislation that really concerned people. I think this was also featured in the white paper, which I'll refer to a bit later on in this, which is that there was a provision in it to silence legal but harmful speech that was conducted online. Now, what this would mean, as they pointed out a number of times, was if it was legal to say something in person, like if I turned to Peter and said something horrible about his mother or something else that is very sacred to him, that's legal for me to say in person. But if I were to send him a tweet saying that same thing, then all of a sudden there's a grey area, which means that it might get taken down. And I don't know what could happen if it wasn't taken down. Perhaps I could get into some form of legal trouble for it, even though it's legal but harmful. There was lots of grey area here. that mainly just made it clear that this was going to be another violation on free speech, another violation creating new hate speech laws and creating new avenues through which the government can intrude on your ability to express yourself online, which, given the amount of communication that goes online right now, just inhibits your ability to communicate with other people at all. Wasn't looking good. How much have you looked into it in the past?
A lot, and working in Parliament for 10, 11 years, kind of followed it closely. And as often, a government brings in a bill that they say it's for one thing and they use it for something completely different. But in this, they're quite blatant, because the whole issue of protecting children online, that could have been quite a small, narrow bill, and yet it's 500 pages. It's huge.
It's ridiculous.
And there's no way that anyone can understand it except if you have lawyers going in, and this is just going to be a boon to the legal system.
That's always the thing that happens with these bills, though. You go in and you'll have the lawyers and the NGO policy wonks are the ones who write all this up and draft it, and they will give a general overview to the MPs and say, this is going to help you to tackle child safety online. And the MP goes, well, that sounds really nice. Let's do that then. And it will be packaged with a load of other things that the MPs may or may not know about, because of the fact that MPs are often, this isn't going to apply to every single one of them, but often quite stupid. If you've ever looked at British politics, they're kind of idiots. And I don't think anybody watching this is going to disagree with me there. And once again, it's been going through the slate for, I think it was originally come up with back in 2019. The white paper was 2020. There's been revisions and drafts of it done since then. The legal but harmful provision has been taken out of it since then. But as we'll find, some of the reporting on it, like by Sky News, is still talking about it as if the provision is still in there. And I can guarantee, whether or not the provision is explicitly in there, it will be administered as though it's still there, no matter what, because harm is such a nebulous concept. Harm is the most airy-fairy concept you could ever list, ever. And people will interpret it whatever way is most politically convenient for them. And as I said, it's passed. There you go. Disclose TV said on Tuesday, just in, UK's online safety bill for a safer internet has passed its final parliamentary debate and will become law soon. More social media platforms that do not comply with the new rules could face fines of up to 10% of their global annual revenue. Now, that's a lot.
It changes the whole game for social media companies in this debate, whether they're publishers or just themselves or just hosting.
Or platforms.
So yeah, and 10% of the globe. But I was blown away by how few MPs actually opposed this and how events happened to move this bill forward. Like when David Ames was stabbed and killed, then the call was, well, we need the online safety bill to stop this. He was stabbed because someone walked in and stabbed him.
Yeah, that's the funny thing, the way they manipulate it, because I'm pretty certain, wasn't the guy who stabbed David Amos already being observed by Prevent?
Yep, he was.
As they always are. And Prevent, as a body, was started to tackle Islamic terrorism in the UK. And like you say, when they switch things around, I believe now primarily focuses its threats on domestic terrorism by white supremacists and other such things. The same way as the FBI is weaponized against its own domestic citizens in the US. Always terrible how these things happen. And once again, though, I don't know how they're going to implement all of this without using the AIs, which they probably will try and do. But if they make it too difficult for businesses to operate in the UK, these businesses might just pull out.
So what Facebook have written to say this has to change, obviously owning WhatsApp, Signal have written. I know Wikipedia have said they just cannot operate in the UK if this happens, because the argument for the companies is the government asked for a backdoor. So our loving government, our Prime Minister who loves us all and cares for us.
Yeah, he has such a care for the British people.
Lies awake at night.
He doesn't want to open the borders to let streams of Indians into the country.
No, it is us. And if the government are given a backdoor access into the system, then that is available for anyone. You cannot just allow the government access that, but all the bad people can't. It's there, it's open. And like Signal and WhatsApp have both said, they have the encryption and it is a closed system. They just cannot give the key to the government. It's impossible.
Yeah, and that's the practical difficulties with all of this, because it's Ofcom that's going to be regulating a lot of this as it goes through. And I forget this specific example, but I know in the past our government has tried to do these kinds of really heavy-handed regulations on companies like Apple and the way that they implement their regulation of terms and service and safe content that's available online. And Apple just turned around and said, "Well, we can't do this. We won't do it."
Yep.
And I think the BBC, not the BBC, although they are basically the same as the government just had to back down from it.
Yep.
Because the government can only do so much. Once again, when we talk about the UK government in these big, shadowy, evil terms, I do agree that I think they've got malicious intent for the natives of the British Isles. And I do think that a lot of what they do is on purpose. But we've got malicious intent mixed with confounding stupidity and incompetence by a lot of them at the same time. So it's very difficult for me to square the circle of how this is going to work in practice, even with Ofcom. Because if Ofcom ends up coming in and trying to regulate social media companies, we don't know if that's going to include platforms like us. How they're going to do that, if they're going to stick to us the same rules and guidelines that apply to an organization like GB News. This is all still to be seen, as far as I can tell. All I know is that for organizations like us, they won't be very nice to us in the same way that they probably would be to organizations that toe the party lines.
100%. And the last thing you want is Ofcom to have more control. The last thing you want is more government regulation. That's where all speaking against the problem we have is too much government regulation and intrusion and control. And if the government step back, but again, this is under a conservative government. This is under supposedly a government that traditionally wanted smaller government restrictions, personal responsibility, getting out of your life, and yet this has been pushed by them. So all of this happened 13 years of the wonderful years that we've had under a Tory government.
Of the most radically left-wing government that England has ever had, and that includes Tony Blair and Gordon Brown's New Labour, because they took the ball and they ran with it. They ran further than anybody could have ever expected them to in the past 13 years. And let's take a look at some of the details. So they passed it. The Online Safety Bill has passed its last parliamentary hurdle in the House of Lords. Thank you very much, House of Lords. You're always such a safeguard against government tyranny, just like you were intended to be. Meaning it'll be fun. It's so nice that, was it Tony Blair who changed it so it wasn't hereditary peers anymore? It was, you could be nominated as a peer. So that's really worked out well for government tyrants, hasn't it? Flagship piece of legislation will force social media firms to remove illegal content and protect users, especially children, from material which is legal but harmful. Once again, they've used the legal but harmful term in there, so I don't know if Sky News know that it's been taken out, but if they do, then they know implicitly that it's going to be regulated like that anyway. Also, a lot of this illegal content we already have laws against. We have things like the Communications Act, which means that, and even if you go on the Apple and Android store and you have an app that you want to sell through there, they will have all of these same terms and conditions. Like you say, it's just to be able to facilitate the government having the back door into all of these and to have an even greater hand in regulating them if they actually can.
And the 500 pages, it means that you'll have test cases. Those test cases will go to our liberal judges who will then rule, actually, this is what was meant. It is the courts that decide what is actually meant because it's not written in language to be understandable by anyone. So the judges will rule, actually, they did mean something that's harmful. They did mean something that's hateful. They did mean something that you didn't like and offended you. And then...
And even then, when the government gets involved in these things and they say, we're doing this to protect children, let's not forget that when Elon Musk bought Twitter, it was revealed that what everybody knew already, that the FBI had a massive hand in organizing political activity on Twitter, regulating it, censoring particular political activists. And at the same time, were well aware of all of the child sexual exploitation material that had been on the platform and done basically nothing about it and sat by while somebody who was a very suspect character, what was his name? Something Roth, I think his name was the digital content supervisor for the stuff that was allowed on Twitter, in charge of making sure that material wasn't on there. And he just did nothing about it, realistically. It was Elon who came in and has tried as best as he can to remove most of that material. So even when you're trying to protect kids with the help of the government don't care. The government don't care about your kids. We know this for all of the things that they allow to happen to people's children. I mean, we just covered earlier on today, and you'll see it will come out on the weekend, all of this nonsensical, brilliant Black British history, which is being funded by the government to brainwash your children. It's a children's book. The government don't care about your history. They don't care about your well-being. They don't care about your safety. They care about their bottom line and maximizing an incredible mass immigration policy. That's all they care about at the end of the day, and controlling you if you disagree with that. They say, perhaps most controversially, one of the proposals would force platforms like WhatsApp and Signal to undermine messaging encryption so private chats can be checked for criminal content, which might just make them go, okay, we're just not going to operate here then.
Wasn't it Apple that objected to... No, Apple was going to scan every message to look for child abuse pictures, and then they pulled back because, again, it's a balance between protection and privacy. This puts a cart and horse through that, and it's just full control, and privacy goes out the window because supposed protection.
Yeah, that's the thing. They'll dress it up in the nice sounding thing. Well, we want to prevent child exploitation online. So do I. But governments have shown time and time again that they don't actually care about it as much as they say they do, and they can't really do much about it.
Grooming gangs, one, but anyway.
Yeah. The bill requires social media companies to remove illegal content quickly or prevent it from appearing in the first place, including content promoting self-harm. Once again, they already do this. Other illegal content it wants to crack down on includes selling drugs and weapons, inciting or planning terrorism, sexual exploitation, hate speech, scams. All of these things we already have laws against. All of these things we already have laws against. So why this specific bill to make it even safer online? Communications regulator Ofcom will largely be responsible for enforcing the bill. And I think this is primarily the thing that they want to get through, greater Ofcom regulation in all of this. With social media bosses facing fines of billions of pounds or even jail if they fail to comply, bill has created new criminal offences, including cyber flashing and the sharing of deep fake pornography. So no more unsolicited deep pics, which, I think that's a pretty horrible thing to do in the first place. It's pretty gross to send pictures like that to somebody who hasn't asked for them, but you don't need these 500 pages of legislation and anything. You could probably just take a bill like the Communications Act, which I'm not a big fan of in the first place because of Section 127, but you could probably just amend a bit of that to make this a crime if it wasn't already. There's probably already somewhere in a bill that nobody's ever heard of a provision making that criminal.
It's true. The issue is they bring massive pieces of legislation in. The devil is in the detail. And they could bring much smaller. You could have a 30-page bill that actually covered specific areas, and then it will be understandable. But instead, it's all lumped together, and no one really knows what it's for. That's the issue. You could have small bills, 30-page bills on all these things individually, or amend previous bills. You don't need a new one.
Yeah. And we talk about them sneaking provisions in here.
Yeah.
There's this one, which is really sinister and really insidious, if you ask me. On this BBC article, they talk about some of the things. So platforms will show they're committed to removing illegal content, including there's all these nice things that you don't want on the internet that I completely agree with. You don't want child sexual abuse, controlling or coercive behavior, although even that is really nebulously worded. So that can be, like you say, interpreted by any judge to mean anything.
Yep.
Extreme sexual violence, that's great. Illegal immigration and people smuggling, just pop there in the middle. So what does that mean? Well, in all likelihood, that means that if Ofcom does regulate this the way it says on paper, if you are, say, an independent journalist, and you want to go to the channel, the coastline next to the channel where a lot of these migrants will come over and drop themselves off, often escorted by our Royal Navy, of course, and you film it and want to put it on Twitter and expose that, hey, this is what's happening at the coastline, that might be illegal under this. So they're just going to create a monopoly where only the mainstream sources are able to report on such things. And you have to ask, will they choose to report on such things? Because everybody knows that it's independent journalists really are the only ones who really like to make a big stink about this. Very interesting. And like you said, Wikipedia have said they can't really do this. This is back from April. They've said Rebecca McKinnon of the Wikimedia Foundation, which supports the website, says it would violate our commitment to collect minimal data about readers and contributors. A senior figure in Wikimedia UK fears the site could be blocked as a result, but the government says only services posing the highest risk to children will need age verification, which means we will pick and choose.
What could go wrong?
Yeah. You've always got to try and pick through the legalese that they say it in and the incredibly neutral politics speech. But that really is what it just means there. We'll pick and choose who it applies to. Don't worry, Wikipedia. We know you're basically run by communists, and therefore you're exactly what we, the conservative government of the UK, want children to have access to. But say you're a platform like maybe even Lotus Eaters, who turns around and says, Wikipedia is a communist platform, and all of this stuff that you're being told in your school that has been given to your children is a complete lie. They'll go, well, that's pretty harmful to children if you ask me. That's how I worry that it's going to be applied going into the future. Ofcom themselves put out an update a few months ago about how we're preparing to regulate online safety. This was a few months ago, so they just knew. They just knew that it was going to pass already. Phase 1, illegal harms duties. Our previous commitment was to publish our first draft code of practice within 100 days of our powers commencing. We've had more time to prepare these and now publish blah, blah, blah. We will also publish a register of risks related to illegal content, risk profiles of service characteristics, draft guidance to services on how to conduct their own risk assessments, and on how services can identify illegal content, draft guidance on record keeping, and Ofcom's draft enforcement guidelines. And then they've got phase 3, where they're going to be saying that transparency, user empowerment, and other duties characterized platforms. Small proportion of regulated services will be designated these different ones. Duties include produce transparency reports, provide user empowerment tools, operate in line with terms of service, protect certain types of journalistic content, and prevent fraudulent advertising. So what this suggests to me is just going to create another labyrinth of regulatory compliance departments that these social media companies are going to have to use. And as we know, the HR department, if you're watching this at work right now, I'm sure is your favorite department to have to deal with. HR departments and compliance departments are just basically there to be infiltrated by leftist activists and haranguing, henpecking women who hate your guts because you want to be able to have a laugh and a joke at work. So that's
it's in effect like a prevent program for online conversations that individuals can be designated as different risks, and then action must be taken against those individuals. And then Harry will have to go to a re-education camp somewhere and learn all the good things.
I know all of the good things. I just want to make this a very clear statement for the government watching this right now. Ofcom, I've worked at local radio stations before. I know the kind of red tape that you have to wade through. So I just want you to know, I like the good things. And I fundamentally disagree with, on the most basic terms, all of the bad things. And I just want you to know that. Deborah, if you're watching this right now, HR Deborah, I'm sure you are, with Ofcom. And Carl has also pointed out, if you look through the original white paper, some of the wording in it is a little bit worrying and somewhat suspect, where he says, for anyone wondering, there's a lot of pernicious stuff in the online safety bill and some good, but the part that really stands out for me is the government's intent to police truth and falsity, calling it a threat to their way of life, because, of course, part of it is all about the stopping the spread and flow of misinformation, including inaccurate anti-vaccination messaging online, which poses a threat to public health, and this is a threat to our way of life. Now, perhaps this has always been propaganda of one form or another, but the propaganda that I was taught as a young man was that the British government and the British way of life was somewhat more, I don't want to say liberal because I don't want to gag, but somewhat more free and somewhat more intent on preserving the liberties of the individuals who live and work within England and Britain than this. So this just seems to be our way of life. I'm sure is being used in the same way that elites and politicians use our democracy, more as a way of denoting the specific behaviors of the elite classes, not our way of life as the aggregate British people, because they're intent on destroying that. We've known that for a long time.
I would love to see the legal definition for disinformation. I don't know if that exists yet in law.
Well, it's funny that Ofcom are so intent on going against disinformation, and yet at the same time, horrible histories can say that Septimius Severus was a proud black man.
Yeah.
I don't think the historical record entirely agrees with you there. Some would say that it's maliciously spread false information, disinformation, you could say. But Ofcom don't seem to agree. You can read more about it on the Online Harms white paper, and it's in here that they specify that they're going to be talking about the development of AI systems, saying that AI techniques can be used to target and manipulate individual voters with highly sophisticated micro-targeting based on individual psychology. I think here what they're talking about is the ability of malicious actors, the Russian state, for Putin to be able to manipulate you, the blue-collar free thinker out there. But they say that also AI can be beneficial in the automatic detection of content or automatically fact-checking articles. And I'm so eager for the Ofcom government BBC Mariana Spring AI fact-checker. to go through, because that is going to be absolutely fantastic. And then you've just got random organizations. I'm sure some of you out there are familiar with Full Fact, completely reputable and trustworthy source, if ever I've seen one, who are always there to let you know that, yes, the government is telling you the exact truth, nothing but the truth. Saying that the online safety bill and misinformation, what you need to know, they're saying that Full Fact has long campaigned for online regulation that tackles misinformation and protects freedom of expression online. And it's organizations like this that support the government, agree with the government, that have a decent media reach that the government will use to refer to if they say, well, what I'm saying is true, what you're saying is false. They're going to be the ones with insider access saying that, well, this needs to go further. This needs to go further. Will the government disagree? Will they say, no, we've intruded enough into the lives of our citizens. We care about the liberties of the British people.
No. And this is a new Ofcom, a level we'd never seen before. It's been limited to press, TV, newspapers. But now, actually, the government are going to police the whole internet. I mean, I don't have any idea what they've claimed they're going to do.
That's my question. That's why at the beginning of this, I said, I don't know if they can, unless they are able to develop very accurate and far-reaching AI systems, which I don't know, perhaps they can. But unless they're able to do that, there's no way they're going to be able to regulate the vast breadth of content that is available online. Because, as you say, the NGOs and lawyers might know how to word all of this, but are the MPs and all of the bureaucrats involved the absolute idiots who occupy the halls of Whitehall and Parliament? Do they know what they're in for? Do they know what they have to do here? I guess we'll find out, won't we?
We will find out, this dark world we enter.
Yes.
So on to something different. Britain's hidden blasphemy laws. And
just for you watching on YouTube right now, before we go into that, I just want to remind everyone again, Sargon, our promo code available on the platform, on the website right now. If you want 50% off for the next 3 months of your subscription, use the code Sargon when buying a new subscription to the website, bronze, silver, or gold tier. And that will be still in effect, that particular code, for the next few weeks, I believe.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the book clubs we do, this one on Doug Stokes Against Decolonization. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.